Welcome to True Crime with Strategic Eyes.
Strategic back again. You know, it's been such a long time since I've done a live. Like, I've been so busy. This has been like an incredibly busy month for me. In fact, there's been a lot going on that has kept me very busy, and I do apologize because I really love you guys. I really enjoy coming here, sharing your time, and trying my best to educate you as well as be educated by you, because as I say a million times in every show, I've got the smartest audience on YouTube. How do I know that? Because I share this audience with some of the greatest YouTubers out there. It's always a blessing. It's always a great opportunity when I can share time with you guys and talk to you. But a lot's been going on. I shared a little bit with the Patreon and the membership. I haven't dropped it yet because I recorded it right before starting this live. That's why I needed a couple extra minutes, so I apologize for that. But I'll drop that after this live is over. You can go over there, kind of get a little peek into my brain and see what's been going on with Strategic. But this is always a very stressful time for me. For you guys, summertime is the time when the trees blossom. If you got those cherry blossom trees, but the trees start to show their leaves and the flowers blossom, and you know, the beaches are calling you, and your swimming pools get open if you're lucky enough to have one, and you get to wear your nice outfits, the whole nine. The summertime is the time to play for most of you guys. For me, the summertime is very stressful because it's a time when we get the majority of our cases. Like, we just get inundated with cases because it's hot. People are out there. People are drinking. People are having a good time. They're socializing and meeting new people, and sometimes they're meeting people that aren't good. That's just going to change their life for the rest of their life. So it's been very stressful, but we powered through. So please do excuse the fact that I haven't dropped as many videos as I'd like to. I dropped an incredible amount of videos during my vacation, but since I've been back from my vacation, it has not been with the frequency that I would like to see. So we're going to talk Bryan Kohberger today because Bryan Kohberger, his deal that everybody's talking about to avoid capital punishment is the blueprint for Stephan Sterns. I'm telling you guys right now, Stephan Sterns is not going to trial. He's not going to trial. We're going to talk about why he's not going to trial. He's not going to go to trial because I told you why he's not going to trial 1,000 times. I was watching Court TV and they were talking about Stephan Sterns' confession. We talked about that months ago, man. We talked about that months ago. Listen, this guy's not going to go to trial because he already confessed to it. We played the audio when he talked to his mother and he explained to his mother how she passed away and how he wasn't himself and all that stuff. Sterns is looking to get a deal. Sterns would have already made a deal. But the prosecutor said initially that capital punishment is not off the table for Stephan Sterns. But all that stuff is subject to change, ladies and gentlemen. You guys, you got to remember at the end of the day who we're dealing with.
Dirt under the bridge.
We're dealing with the dirt under the bridge guy. We're dealing with William J. here, okay? We're dealing with the guy who gave a deal.
Dirt under the bridge.
To Jen Soto, all right? So if you could give a deal to Jen Soto, then you could look at your evidence and you could say, you know what, man? Wow, there's a lot going on here. We got some issues with, possibly some issues with the taking of the phone and the dumping of the phone. I know a lot of you guys don't agree with me on that, but I'm telling you as a professional that was the phone taken correctly, or was the phone taken lawfully? Was Stephan Sterns' phone taken lawfully? The answer is yes. But was it taken best practices? The answer is no. And when you don't take something or do something in law enforcement best practices, defense attorneys now have ammunition to raise doubt on whatever action you took, right? So best practices is, I'm going to be taking this phone as safekeeping for now because you have already attempted to erase stuff off the phone, and I'm going to be getting a warrant for the phone. That's best practices. Then after you get the phone, you get your warrant, you access the phone under judicial authority. So now everything that you get from that phone, you've gotten permission to get that from the phone from a judge, not from the perp. You've now gotten permission from the Constitution to violate that person's Fourth Amendment rights. It's not even a violation. You have superseded their Fourth Amendment rights because you've gotten permission from the courts. That's what you're supposed to do. And what you know will be a capital case. You don't ask the perp for permission to give their phone.
Does that make sense?
You don't do that. That's what she did. She said, "Can I have your phone so that I can look through it?"
Does that make sense?
And he said, "Okay." But then what a lot of people don't understand is we could get past. It's so weird talking because like in the old setup I had, I could hear like the sound, my voice real time in my headset phones, and I can't hear that. It's kind of weird. It makes me talk louder. Maybe I should take this down until I'm ready to listen to a video, which we're going to do in a second. Got some videos we got to listen to. Actually, it's better to talk without the headphones on since there's no reverb in my ears. We could get past the fact that she asked for permission to get the phone. For those of you who are just watching this channel, by the way, I'm going to have to do the sex crimes detective. In fact, let me stop saying that because maybe that's hurting me in the algorithm. Special victims detective. All right. Many departments have special victims, so most people should know what special victims is. I'm a special victims detective. I'm active duty. I'm on the job right now at this very moment. And I do YouTube on the side. If you're new to the channel and you're like, who is this guy? What is he? Why is he talking like that? What authority does he have to speak on these matters? All right. And I have, almost 18 and a half. Oh, excuse me. I have more than 18 and a half years of experience. This next month is going to be a little bit over 18 and a half. Like 18 and 3/4, whatever, who's counting anyway, of law enforcement experience. And I've been doing special victims investigations for various agencies for close to 15 years. All right, so I've been doing it way longer than Detective Tagler. Not trying to match up. I'm really not trying to disrespect this lady in any way, but I'm talking about how she took the phone. So you guys have to understand why is Strategic second guessing this law enforcement officer? Why is he backseat driving or Sunday morning quarterbacking what she did? He wasn't there. I get it. But I'm there every single day. Every day I go to work, I catch a case, especially in the summertime. We just constantly catching cases, at least, maybe not every day. Maybe I catch 3 to 4 cases a week, which is a lot still. It's almost every day, right? So that's 3 to 4 instances where I'm in a position just like Tagler was in, where, I'm doing an investigation for something that might end up being very egregious, and I'm going to take this phone. Is this phone going to be safekeeping or is it going to be arrest evidence? This person says they have sheets and they have clothing. Oh, what am I going to take? Do I really need the sheets? When it's a communal bed and people sleep on that bed all the time, or is it better if I get the panties? Because the lab is not going to test everything because they have limited resources, so they want to make sure that they test things that are probative. These are the decisions I have to make every day, especially decisions such as getting search warrants for cell phones. In fact, in my municipality, I can't even enter a phone without a search warrant. Like it's so important to have that best practice that even though lawfully we could get permission, and there's forms we have in our department that, hey, you want to give me, we'll never use it for a perp. We'd only use it for like victims who want to like if a victim wants us like, hey, there's so much here, just dump my phone because maybe it take too much time for me to like copy and paste all the information on the phone. I might tell the victim like, hey, can I get this forensically dumped so I could get all the information? They're like, yeah, sure. I have nothing to hide. Yeah, you can have everything. Then we take that verbal consent and make them sign a physical consent form and all that good stuff, but not for a subject, not for somebody that we believe may have been a part of, at least at that moment, the disappearance of Maddie. I would get a search warrant. So what I was saying before I get lost in the weeds, we could get past can I have permission to have your phone? That's fine, all right? Let's not beat up Tagler. Okay, that's fine. So she got verbal permission to get the phone, okay? You know, I don't know.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
I can't hear it, so I gotta put this on. We could get past that, but what about getting a search warrant to actually do the forensic dump of the phone? What about getting the search warrant to actually do the forensic dump of the phone? Well, guess what? They didn't even do that. They didn't do that. And I don't care what anybody thinks. First of all, we've seen how that police agency has gotten down. We've watched videos of how they've treated victims in the past. Florida is not really good. They have good laws down there, but they're not executing these laws as good as they should. And so we've seen how the Orange County Sheriff's Department treats their victims of ex-assault. We've seen how the Kissimmee Police Department is just marred with scandal, how they beat and abuse detainees and stuff like that, how many of them have gotten fired and disciplined, how they were covering that stuff up. All this stuff is stuff that happened in 2024, ladies and gentlemen, on or around the time that Maddie went missing. These departments were embroiled in these scandals. We've seen that. So I don't care how much pride one has for these departments because you live in the area. I don't care if you want to defend Tagler because she's a woman. Believe me, I wouldn't have said that unless I had a ton of people coming into my chat, making it a men versus women, gender wars kind of thing, when we're all supposed to be professionals and professionals should be able to critique each other without bringing in race or gender. I don't care what you think. I'm telling you, as an experienced law enforcement detective, I'm telling you that not getting a search warrant to actually dump the phone was borderline misconduct. And I'm using hyperbole. I mean, I get it, because it's not misconduct, okay? Because they got permission, right? They didn't do nothing lawfully wrong. But it's just such terrible practice to dump a phone of a suspect without a search warrant. That doesn't make any sense to me, because if they'd have went to any judge and said, Judge, keywords, last one to see the girl. And one more sentence, Your Honor, after those. Resetted his phone, even though reset is one word. Reset the phone twice. There's not a judge in America that would not give a search warrant for that phone. Not only was he the last one to see the victim, he also attempted to destroy evidence twice. So why not just go? Why not just go to the judge? They have more access to their judges than I do. These small kind of like those areas, the officers go get search warrant. I've never gotten a search warrant in my life. Because in my new municipality, the prosecutors write the search warrants for us. For me, I have more excuse to cut those corners than they do. Because for me to get a search warrant, I got to call up the supervising DA. I got to say, yo, listen, I got this crazy case going on. I need a search warrant. Then I got to explain the case to that supervisor. After I explain the case to that supervisor, they got to now assign an ADA to me. After they assign an ADA, the ADA got to call me. God knows how long that take. Then I got to explain the case to them. Then I got to pray that they don't want to take the case over at that point. And be like, oh, you know what? I want to do some more interviews. Can you bring her or him down to my office? And da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I got to pray that they don't want to just interject themselves into the whole case while I'm in the middle of it, because they have the authority to do that. No matter where they are in America, prosecutors, county attorneys, district attorneys, they could just jump in and take your case if they want, because they're the prosecutor. And then after that, finally, they got to write up the search warrant. Then we got to go and swear it out before the judge. That's when I now come in. Swear it out before the judge, and now I got my search warrant, and I got 10 days to execute it. In places like Florida, the officer writes up the search warrant and just walks into the court. There's no middleman. I got a middleman. There's no middleman in Orange County Kissimmee PD. They could just write up their own search warrants, walk right into the county court, get the judge to sign it, go about their business. If it's after hours, they have on-call judges that won't get mad when they have to pick up the phone at 2 a.m. and sign it. And they sign them things digitally now. So they could have did that search warrant at any time. And guess what? It's not even that urgency. There is an urgency to, of course, to dump the phone because at the time Maddie was still missing. We know how that ended up. But they could have simply just did it the next morning during business hours and dumped that phone. Whether they wanted to do it in an exigent fashion or they wanted to do it in a timely fashion, they still could have did it the right way. And now the defense would not be trying to get that evidence thrown out. And guess what? I was watching court TV again, and they were talking about the very same thing we was talking about in terms of the phone possibly getting thrown out. And guess what? The judge said, I will have a decision by this date. The judge does not have to release their decision during a court date when they're answering these motions. They could just answer the motion and send it to the attorneys. That judge could have been given a decision on the motion to throw out the cell phone. They have not done it yet. We should all be worried. There is a chance that judge might make the prosecution pay for the amateurish type handling of Stephan Sterns' phone. And yes, I said it, amateurish. Not illegal, but amateurish. Now, hold on here. I wasn't looking at the chat, but it looks like we're getting a lot of love. And I want to go ahead and show some love in that chat. And then I want to jump into Bryan Kohberger because we've been going hard on the evidence and stuff like that. But it all ties in. And I'll tell you why it ties in before we start listening to Bryan Kohberger and then going into Stephan Sterns and to why they are connected. They're joined at the hip, ladies and gentlemen. So, big shout out. Let's see how this works. First of all, big shout out to Sam I Am, Texas, with 11 months as a White Shield member supporting True Crime with Strategic. Thank you so much. You are amazing. Says working on my 1 year with Strategic Eyes. Thank you so much. Then we got Leon Littlejohn with, okay, so we got 5, 10, 15, 20. So Leon Littlejohn kept dropping. So far, they've dropped 4 5-gift memberships. So let's go back to grade school. 4 times 5. That's 20 free memberships that were given to some lucky folks, man. That is so awesome. Thank you so much, Leon Littlejohn. Sorry I didn't get you a little bit earlier, but you know I'm on my rant. I'm ranting, but I saw you in my peripheral. I'm like, oh my God, I see a lot of love being shown. Let me go over there and show that love. So we thank you and we appreciate you. It's very kind of you. And then we have Erica Garcia, who just became a patrol member, upgraded to a patrol member. So thank you so much for supporting the channel, all you fine people, Sam I Am, Erica Garcia, and thank you so much for your generosity, Leon Littlejohn. You are appreciated. It's very kind. All right, so let's get back over here. And so why all this ties in, guys, is because the defense attorneys are doing their job for Stephan Sterns, the same good job that the defense attorneys did for Bryan Kohberger, which is to bog down the system with motions and make the prosecutor call into question the very evidence that they are going to rely on to try and get that conviction. For one purpose, not for Bryan Kohberger to be found not guilty, not for Stephan Sterns to be found not guilty, for the prosecutor to say it's probably smarter, cheaper, and less drama, because believe me, preparing for a trial is extremely difficult for prosecutors and defense attorneys. A trial is extremely difficult. I was in a meeting the other day, or a training rather, it was actually a training, with our local prosecutors, because they're kind of just, touching bases, giving us some insight into how they like these cases put together, because at the end of the day, it's their cases, right? That they're going to be arguing. So we're fact finders building a case for them. And we're at the table discussing a case. One of the prosecutors, me and her recently, recently we're working a very high profile on a big case. I'm actually very surprised that this case did not make the national news, because at the time that this case came out, it was, Trump just got in and there was this migrant stuff. And so this case has a lot of isms built into it. Like the perpetrator I'll just say the perpetrator is a migrant. All right. That's not giving you a clue into the case, but there's something else that's a special category for this perpetrator that we were afraid. We were not looking forward to it. We were afraid that the national media was going to, and the Trump administration and others were going to latch onto this story for their own political purposes, because it is that salacious of a case, and it fit right into the narrative that was being spoken to at that time. But it never happened, so that's good, because you don't want that kind of distraction when you're trying to bring justice to a victim. And so the prosecutors at the table in our little work groups during this training, and they were using this case that we worked together as a showcase. And her command on the facts of that case was even beyond my own command of the case, and it was my case. And of course, because when the prosecutor gets the case, they always do more work on the case. They always develop more facts. And so they actually end up getting more information than the actual case investigator. But I was so impressed in her ability to recite every single freaking detail of that case. And that is the command that you need when you're going to actually prosecute a case and go before a court, go before a jury, and argue that case to a jury. And prosecutors think about that. They say, oh my God, if I don't have to go through that process, should I? And sometimes it just makes sense to give the deal. And if the deal is life without parole in exchange for not getting a death penalty, well, guess what? Sometimes that deal seems pretty lucrative, especially when capital punishment does not mean capital punishment for at least 15 to 20 years. Look at everybody who has been executed in the last year or two and see when they did their crime. You'll see people who were arrested in the 80s, in the 90s, and finally they're going to the chair. Sometimes for some prosecutors, they'll never live to even see the person that they got sentenced to capital punishment meet their day. Of course, if you're a very old, experienced attorney, because a lot of attorneys are old. And it takes so long for capital punishment to play out that if you're, 60s and 70s and you prosecuted this case and you got that capital punishment decree, you'll probably not be alive when that person finally gets put to death. So it just makes sense to give the deal. And I have a feeling that they're going to give that deal to Stephan Sterns, ladies and gentlemen. I have a feeling, and this is the reason why. All right, we monologued for a while, for 23 minutes. But we didn't monologue with something that was not probative. Everything I said actually had everything to do with what this show is about. So I hope you understand that. But anyway, so this is Bryan Kohberger. Let's play a little bit.
Turn of events.
Big shout out to Court TV, by the way. You guys can't see it. Sorry, I didn't transition over. Big shout out to Court TV. I love it. I watch them all the time. Please, I can't even tell you go subscribe to Court TV because you probably already are subscribed to Court TV. So anyway, let's listen to Vinny. I think this is Vinny. Sounds like Vinny. Let's listen to him talk about this deal that Kohberger got.
Bryan Kohberger has accepted a plea deal.
This is not Vinny. This is the black guy. My brother. He's not my real brother. My brother in Christ. I don't know his name, though. We'll figure it out.
Kohberger was charged in the brutal stabbings of Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin in their off-campus house in November of 2022. The prosecution proposed dropping the death penalty in exchange for Kohberger pleading guilty to the 4 murders and to the burglary charge. Kohberger must also agree to spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole, and he must waive his right to appeal. All pretty standard when you take a plea deal. Now, the family of one of the victims, Kaylee Gonsalves, posted an update to social media saying, "We are beyond furious at the state of Idaho. They have failed us. Please give us some time. This was very unexpected." A court hearing is scheduled on the matter for July 2nd. Let's bring back in our guest. Joining us to discuss, former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, Nima Rahmani. Nima, first and foremost, I want to get your reaction to this incredible news.
Michael, I'm shocked. We're talking about one of the most gruesome murders in Idaho state history, a case that everyone's been following since it happened almost 3 years ago, November 2022. And really, out of nowhere, we're scheduled for trial in mid-August. I mean, the judge, denied the defense motion to continue the case. It denied the defense theory of the real killer, right? Said the defense can't present evidence of these other 4 individuals because there's no legal or factual basis to do so. So we've been getting ready for this trial.
This guy, whenever I look at this guy, he reminds me of that movie American Psycho. Before we go any further, we're using all this stuff from fair use. We don't have to really say that because court TV is good. They don't come after people. But I do want to say that, this video is being done for entertainment purposes. Although it's being done for entertainment purposes, I am an active duty sex crimes investigator, and I'm using my experience to inform the audience of what's going on in these topics that we're going to be discussing today. All right, so I'm just saying that for YouTube, for the YouTube gods. We're also not going to be saying anything inappropriate. We're not going to be violating any YouTube terms of services or guidelines or anything like that. All right, that being said, let's continue.
We've been getting ready for this trial here on Court TV and really the entire country and world for almost the past 3 years. Now, I'm not surprised the family is upset. Obviously, as victims, they have rights. They have a right to be heard. They have a right to be consulted. But ultimately, it is the prosecution's decision.
Right. So people are like upset that this happened. And first of all, we're not talking about the families because the families have every right to be upset. 1,000%. They have every right to be upset because, really at the end of the day, the justices, what does justice look to them, right? Because they're the victims. Okay. So, but I should say, it's no secret that the death penalty is very expensive and time consuming. Somebody in the chat said, well, strategic, why does it take so long to go from DP to actually executing the verdict that was given, which is, going to bed, right? The reason why is because you're entitled to appeals. Like, you're entitled to appeals. Like, you could do plea deals. Like, in his plea deal will probably say he doesn't have a right to appeal the plea deal. And even when they all say that, right? And you still are able to appeal these plea deals to a certain extent. There's a higher probability that the appellate court is going to say, no, we're not going to hear this. But you still could try to appeal it. But you cannot deny somebody appeals for capital punishment. So to sentence somebody to that, I think I read somewhere that on average, you're going to be spending at least $10 million of the taxpayers' dollars before you could get to the point where the person actually gets put to bed forever. $10 million. And almost nobody has the resources. And I don't even think they even ask you to pay for your own attorney for those appeals. I mean, really, and the people who do the appeals are some of the best attorneys. Like, it's taxpayer funded appeal attorneys that are assigned to you. And these are very experienced attorneys. Like, even if you had money to purchase your own attorney, you might as well just take the one that the state is going to give you, because the one that the state is going to give you is a really good attorney. These are really good attorneys that specialize in appealing these type of verdicts. And all they do is just bog down the system for years. And then by the time it's carried out, it's 15, 20 years in. So at the end of the day, although I want capital punishment for Stephan Sterns, we do have to ask ourselves, is it the best thing when we could be settling for life in prison for justice for Maddie and then putting this to bed and not further hurting our community, because there's a lot of people who are emotionally invested in this and they're suffering every day that Maddie doesn't have justice. The family, which is the most important ones, the family of Maddie's maternal family, paternal family. There are people that loved her immensely on both sides of that equation who want justice, and justice is delayed and will be delayed for decades if Sterns is found guilty and given the death penalty. Sometimes it maybe doesn't make sense to seek capital punishment. Sometimes the best justice one could get is getting life in prison. But anyway, let's keep going.
And there's nothing the families can do to stop this from happening. I have to give credit to Ann Taylor and the defense team. They filed many pretrial motions to set this case up for both trial and appeal. And regardless how you feel about the death penalty, this, if you do believe in it, is a death penalty case.
Now, he just said something very, very interesting, which is what made me also say, yeah, there's a serious parallel between Kohberger and Stephan Sterns. This attorney, this is a prosecutor, tons of experience doing these type of cases. One thing with Court TV and all these channels, they get some of the top attorneys out there to come on these shows and give us their perspective. He said that the defense attorneys for Kohberger did an excellent job bogging down the system with these motions to prepare for appeals. And what a lot of you guys don't realize is that it doesn't really matter as much if the judge comes down with a ruling saying, yeah, the cell phone stays. The fact that they put in that motion to dismiss it, they now have grounds to appeal this if Sterns goes to trial and is found guilty. They can say, well, appellate court, we think that this judge was wrong about the cell phone. Can you please take another look? So now we're up to chance again. Chance. You see, at the end of the day, we could be confident that a judge is going to rule in such a way. But it's all up to chance. It's all up to chance for decades. Let me give you an example. And I'm not trying to talk politics with you guys, but I'm giving you, this is a really good example. It's not going to offend anybody on any side. For decades, I think since the 1960s, 1963 to be exact, is the first time these nationwide injunctions started happening where judges had the ability to issue a nationwide injunction to stop a policy or an executive order or something like that, that they felt violated the law, the Constitution, or whatever. This worked its way up to the Supreme Court. And out of nowhere, the Supreme Court did the exact opposite that all the experts thought that they would do. The experts believed that the Supreme Court right now would rule against the Trump administration. And guess what? They decided not to. So now judges don't have the ability to do nationwide injunctions anymore. They can only do it for the districts that they cover. You cannot presume to know what a judge is going to do, ladies and gentlemen. You can't presume to know what anybody is going to do. So there's a possibility that Stephan Sterns' judge might throw out that phone. There's a possibility he might keep it in. There's a possibility that after the case is over, if it goes to trial, that an appellate court might look at this decision that this judge made about keeping the phone if that's the decision that he made. And they might say, I was wrong. We don't like what Tagler did. We don't like what Tagler did. We don't think that she had the necessary exigency to take that phone. Or maybe we felt like some type of policy and procedure that the court had laid out was not followed, and therefore that phone should be thrown out. You know what? Reopen the case, send it back to the court, retrial. So prosecutors have to think about that. They have to think about all of the motions that the defense puts in and say, could this result in my case being reopened on appeal? Another example is when that defense said, hey, we need to keep media out of the court because strategic eyes is on Stephan Sterns' arse. That's a big one on appeal. I guarantee you if that went to the appeals court, once they heard the name strategic, True Common Strategic, they reopen the case. They say, nah, it wasn't a fair trial for Stephan Sterns because strategic was on that arse. Let me stop. All right, let's get back to this. Really good stuff this guy's throwing out there.
There's really no reason why these 4 innocent young men and women had to have their lives taken. So credit to the defense. They did an outstanding job for their client. If you are a death penalty lawyer, your number one job is to keep your client alive. That's what they did here. My hearts go out to the victims and their families. I think they're not happy, obviously, with this result, but shocking, to say the least. I have really no other words to describe this, Michael.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, specifically about the job done by the defense. One may look at this, Nima, and say, well, why did they go through all that if, maybe they knew he was guilty?
I had to look that up real quick. Is Aki in here? Maybe she's asleep. No. I don't see Aki in here. I told her I was going live. Let me see if she here. Hit her up like, yo, where you at, son? Well, I had to look this guy up because I always look him up because I always forget about his name. So this is another example. Nicholas Cruz. Nicholas Cruz was evil. He had a tough life. We all have tough lives. His brother had a tough life. His brother wasn't out there trying to kill people. Nicholas Cruz should have got capital punishment. We all thought Nicholas Cruz was going to get capital punishment. Did Nicholas Cruz get capital punishment, ladies and gentlemen? No. Once again, you cannot presume what a court is going to do. You cannot guess it. You can't surmise it. Court is going to do what a court is going to do.
Guilty, maybe they didn't, and they were putting forth these theories, and even though they knew maybe that he was involved. But again, all of those things were sort of forcing the system to prove what they were claiming, right, what they were accusing him of, but also getting the best result for their client. That's their job.
That absolutely is their job. And people ask me, you do criminal defense. I mean, I'm a prosecutor, but, why don't you do criminal defense? And, you don't like defending criminals. And you're right. I don't like defending criminals, but I respect people that do. That is their job. And our system only works when there's prosecutors and there's defense lawyers. And just taking a step back, so I want people to understand the legal strategy here. When you are handling a death penalty case, there's a statistically greater chance that that death sentence is overturned on appeal than you actually have of getting a not guilty verdict from a death penalty qualified panel.
You see what I'm saying? You see that? He's going to explain why that is right now. A lot of these death penalty cases end up being overturned. Not in terms of, he's now innocent, he gets to go free. We're talking about transform that capital punishment verdict to life in prison. It happens a lot. We just don't hear about it because when we're done with these cases, and they finally get to that point, decades have passed. A lot of these cases that got capital punishment verdicts, after decades of going through the courts, the death penalty actually gets overturned and the person gets resentenced to life in prison. But he's going to explain why.
Jurors. So let's understand that, right? When you're doing voir dire, right, we've gone through jury selection a lot here on Court TV, but if it's a death penalty case, the judge also asks the potential juror's view on capital punishment. And if someone says, I can never impose the death penalty or I couldn't follow the law, well, that juror is going to be excused. So in these death penalty cases, the jurors tend to skew more conservative. Obviously, in a case like this, there'd be a lot of pressure on the jurors to return a death sentence. So what the defense was trying to do is, and I know a lot of people have been watching thought he was actually innocent. I think once the Amazon search history came out, there was really overwhelming evidence in this case on top of the DNA on the knife sheath at the scene, the white Hyundai launcher video, the cell site evidence. What the defense tried to do is by filing all these pretrial motions very aggressively, motion after motion, they were forcing the prosecution to oppose it, but the judge to make rulings that could potentially be overturned on appeal because you just need one appellate judge or justice. And we know in death penalty cases, Michael, there's mandatory state and federal appeals. So they'd have multiple.
Right, mandatory state. And these cases can go up to the Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen. Big shout out to Alice Taj from New Mexico. Oh, she didn't say New Mexico. She said Mexico, from Mexico. Thanks for coming through, showing love from Mexico. We appreciate you. We love our international audience here on True Crime with Strategic. And guys, just a quick reminder, please hit that like button, support the channel. We only ask you guys to hit the like button so that we can get into that algorithm That's it. All right. So if you like the content, you appreciate what we're doing here, make sure you hit that like button, show that love. And once again, big shout out to everybody who's become a member. Rachel M is now a White Shield member. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Mallory Beavers celebrating 11 months as a patrol member. She threw me some nice hearts. Appreciate you. That's very kind of you. And lastly, don't forget, we do have a merch shop. The link is inside of the chat. You'll see my Linktree link. The Linktree link opens up a web page that has all of the links that are relevant to True Crime Strategic, including our merchandise shop. So we got some really nice merch. And you know what? For some reason, I don't know if I'm getting old. I never considered myself a cat guy. I'm still not a cat guy. I'm allergic to them. But we got quite a few cool like sweaters that have cats mixed in with the True Crime Strategic logo. I think they're cool. That's why I have them up there. If it's not cool, I don't mess with it. I don't have it. You know what I mean? So I really think it's cool. Think it's nice. We have some really awesome merchandise. And the store that we're dealing with, you can put or customize the logo on almost anything, whether it be something like a mug to a hat to stickers. We have everything at every price point. So consider going over there and do some shopping, get some for some friends and family. All right. But most importantly, hit that like button, please, and support the channel. Let's keep going.
Multiple bites at it. By ultimately litigating the case as aggressively the way they did, they were able to save their client's life, which is a really testament to the defense.
So now let's look at the Stephan Sterns case, right? We already went through this stuff. I don't have to go through it and turn this live into a 3-hour live when I'm trying to keep it into under an hour because I got to go to work in the morning time. We're already at 41 minutes. Stephan Sterns already confessed to this. He confessed. Stephan Sterns has already confessed. We listened to that confession here on this show. If you didn't hear it, I have the video in my catalog. Go check it out. It's very well labeled too. The confession that nobody heard, Stephan Sterns or something like that, maybe that should be the title of it, but whatever. You'll find it inside of the playlist. Stephan Sterns already confessed. He said, I was not in my right mind. I don't know what came over me. He described her body being cold. He described all that stuff. He said it was too late. She was already gone. That's why he didn't go downstairs and he should have, and wake Jen up. Then he told the mother, there's no conspiracy here. Jen didn't have nothing to do with it and all that good stuff. He gave a full-throated confession. I think that was the title of it. Full-throated confession. That is all probative. That's also all evidence. That's also going to be a part of this trial. He said that on a jail phone to his parents. It's over. And then when we look at all of the plethora of evidence that we got from his cell phone, even if they throw out the phone, the case is not over. That's why I've told you guys there's no way that Stephan Sterns is getting off. Some people who have agreed with me have said, well, if the case and I think I heard on Court TV where they said, well, if the phone gets thrown out, what happens to the case? Does the case get thrown out? No, the case not thrown out. Because you can argue for the Google Drive eventual discovery. As a result of you doing your investigation, you were going to dump the phone anyway, and you were going to get a search warrant for the Google Drive. That was going to happen anyway. So you would have eventually discovered that. Now, you could punish the prosecution and say, well, I don't like how you took the phone, so I'm going to throw the phone away. Well, guess what? There's only but a few photos that were locally stored on the phone because he resetted his phone twice. Twice he resetted his phone. I think they only found but just a few photos locally on his phone because they were all deleted. Where they found all of the evidence was the Google Drive. Where they found all the location information was the Google Drive. The text messages, the Google Drive. Because everything was backed up to the cloud. So you can argue eventual discovery. You could say, listen, we're going to find that anyway. You could throw the phone out. Go ahead. Throw the phone out, Judge. It's all good. Give the defense something. Throw them a bone. Because they're doing a good job. They are doing a great job, his defense team. I definitely have a lot of respect for his defense team. I have a respect for all defense attorneys. We talk about this on this channel all the time. The Constitution doesn't say nothing about prosecutors. The Constitution mentions defense attorneys. Because the Constitution understood, the framers of our Constitution, they understood that the government is going to be the government. They're going to have unlimited resources. What's going to keep our union together, what's going to keep our freedoms intact is a robust defense. The ability for somebody to have representation and to be defended against allegations made against them. That's what keeps our union and our freedoms intact. So it makes us the best country on the planet. So the case is not going anywhere because there's overwhelming evidence against Stephan Sterns. Overwhelming evidence. The question is, do you want to argue for capital punishment and be fighting capital punishment for the next 15 to 20 years? And if you're Stephan Sterns, do you really want to go to trial and be forced to sit in the defense chair with your mother and your father inside of the gallery and the whole world watching, including cameras, and have the prosecution reciting Google pick number 12567 GKY? What does it pick, detective? Google pick 1256 GKBY depicts Stephan Sterns doing this action to Madeline Soto. Do you want to hear the gasps of the jury when they show the videos and the pictures of what you were doing behind closed doors while Jen was getting her sleep? Because she got to get her sleep. I don't know about you guys, but Stephan Sterns comes off to me as a coward. I've said that on my channel before. He's a coward. I don't think that coward has the stomach to face his evil wares and deeds. I don't think he has the stomach to sit in the defense chair and watch what he did to Maddie on a screen in the courtroom. Sorry about that. Got to collect myself. Swallowed a piece of dust or something. I don't think he has that type of gumption. I really don't think so. And so I think that what Stephan Sterns wants is a deal. The problem is the deal that he wants is not being offered. And Stephan Sterns and his attorneys, they know that, they're not foolish people. They're not foolish people. They're not expecting 25 years incarceration. They know that it's going to be life without the possibility of parole, but that's the thing. Life without the possibility of parole is not being offered right now by William J. Because he's not ready
Dirt under the bridge.
to make it dirt under the bridge. He's not ready for that yet. But I think that eventually he will be. Let's let that play out for a second.
And even if he was convicted, Nima, it could have taken 30, 40 years for them to ultimately impose that death penalty because of the appeals. It always seemed that that was the way they were going in this case. I want to quickly talk about the victims before I run out of time. One of the things that surprised me was that they were saying this is the first they've heard of it when it was sort of let out. Of course, there is a gag order, but you would expect that before prosecutors did a deal like this, they would have consulted with the family. Did that surprise you?
That's very surprising. And if that is true, that is shameful. You are a prosecutor. Your job is to pursue.
I'm still going to talk about whether they told the family or not. I'm pretty sure they told the family. The family's just probably upset about it. Or they told the principal people in the family. Because a lot of times when these tragedies happen, you get cousins and third cousins, and all of them want to be in the mix. When at the end of the day, your obligation is to the immediate family, right? I think I certainly, I don't know this prosecutorial team, but my mind's eye tell me, because these are professional people, that they definitely notified the immediate family. And if they didn't, then it would be very sad. But it is what it is. I think people are debating in the chat on whether, what's this guy's name? I always forget his name because I don't ever want to remember it. So I think that's a good thing. My memory sucks. I don't want to know his name. Nicholas Cruz. They were saying that he was too young and that's why he didn't get capital punishment. It's not true. He didn't get capital punishment because the jury voted against it. There was a number of people. We actually did a video on that where we saw the interviews. There was an African-American lady and there was another person that felt that he had a tough life. And that, I guess that when you have a tough life, it gives you permission to do these things. It's a mitigating factor to some people when you have a tough life. I don't think that a tough life should give you permission or an excuse to do what Nicholas Cruz did. But he was charged. The prosecution was seeking capital punishment. If he was not qualified to get it because of age, they would have never been able to take him to, they would never have been able to do it. They just got life right out the gate. The only reason why he did not get capital punishment is because the jury decided, not all, but one or two, I think there were two members of the jury. One did not want to show their face. The other one gave an interview, the African-American lady. I'm only saying that so you could know the description of her if you go look for it. She's a person. Color doesn't matter. She decided her and the other holdout decided that, that he had a tough life, and that's why. And my understanding, I got to look it up. I don't think he was a minor either. I think he was like 18 or something when he did that. He was 19 years old. He was 19 years old, so he wasn't even a juvenile. So we don't give capital punishment to juveniles in America. The Supreme Court ruled against that. You also cannot sentence a juvenile to life without the possibility of parole. The Supreme Court settled that in the last 3 years as well. I remember that court case. So like the last 3 or 4 years, they said that you cannot sentence a juvenile to life without parole. You can sentence them to a very long time in prison, but you just have to have a chance of parole. Even if they never get out, they still have to have the chance to get to parole. And not Adam Lanza. I don't know why Adam Lanza is in my head. That's another nut job. Nicholas Cruz was he was a grown man when he decided to do what he did to those innocent people. Anyway, I want to play for another video for you guys. And this is kind of showing you the type of things that Stephan Sterns' attorneys are doing.
I'm pretty sure you
Court
know what
TV
some of those
again.
pictures are about. You're a very intelligent person. And I don't want you to discredit yourself by saying you don't know about all the pictures that are on your phone. I want to let you know you're not free to leave. You're being detained, okay?
You see that? I just noticed that from Sterns. Every time I watch these videos, I always learn something new. Look at his reaction when he said you're not free to leave, you're being detained. Watch this.
Free to leave. You're being detained.
Okay, I know. It was almost like, yeah, I knew this was coming. It's finally here. He's like, I know. One more time, watch this.
You're being detained, okay? Do you want to know what you're being detained for? Capital sexual battery and possession of child pornography.
All right, let me look at it one more time. I just want to see his reaction when they read that. I was looking at the chat.
Do you want to know what you're being detained for? Capital sexual battery and possession of child pornography.
All right, he gives no reaction. Think about you're in that chair. You know you didn't do anything. They got the wrong phone. They mixed the phones up by accident. Remember when we reported that Jen Soto and Stephan Sterns may have used hard drugs, and the reason why we reported that erroneously, and we apologize, we took that video down, is because the Kissimmee Police Department gave a FOIA request return with all types of evidence from different cases on one sheet, and they didn't even redact it. And so we all thought that belonged to the Madeline Soto case, and it didn't. It didn't. Jen Soto was not doing, there's no evidence she's ever done any hard drugs or anything like that, other than the drugs that she admitted to, which is her medications prescribed to her from a doctor, and marijuana. Now, think about you being in his position. And you know you didn't do anything wrong. And the reason why I told you that story about the drug stuff is that Kissimmee, I told you guys, that's not best practices on how you sign out evidence, right? You sign it out in groups One page will have this group of evidence that's related to this case. Each one will have its own, each paper will have its own case, right? Not mixed together. Or even if it's on one paper, they'll be grouped together. So you usually see this group is for case A, case B, case C. It was just sloppy how they did it, right? So that shows you how they do business. It's sloppy agency. Just like you could say, oh, this is a capital case. Can I have your phone and dump your phone? Is that okay? Huh? I could just get a warrant, but screw it.
Does that make sense?
Why get a warrant when you could just ask a perp for permission? Okay. So anyway, so we know that they're sloppy over there, right? So let's say that you're sitting there and they have your phone and they mix your phone up with somebody else, with somebody diabolical. And you know on your phone, all you had was Barney videos or something. I don't know. I love you, you love me. Like you had nothing salacious on that. And then somebody says, yo, you're being charged with all the nasty stuff that they just said he's being charged with. Look what they charge him with.
Capital sexual battery and possession of child pornography.
What's going to be your reaction when you hear that? What's going to be your reaction? You're going to sit there like Sterns? Or you're going to freak out? You're going to say, what? What? Where'd you get that from? Who told you that? Where'd you? Oh, we saw on your phone. What phone? Describe to me the make, the model, the battery life, the ketchup stains. Describe to me what phone you have in your possession, because that's not my phone. What Sterns did? The jig is up. Let's keep going.
Defendant Stephan Sterns is in the spotlight this morning after he made a rare court appearance where he testified. This is in an effort to have some key evidence against him suppressed from his upcoming sex abuse trial. So Sterns is accused of abusing and killing 13-year-old Madeline Soto. She was the daughter of his girlfriend, Jennifer Soto. They were all living together. And investigators zeroed in on Sterns after allegedly finding pornographic material on his cell phone, reportedly including Madeline. But his lawyers argue the deputies unlawfully took his phone from him, violating his rights against unreasonable searches and seizures. Here's what Sterns said in court, and we want to give you a warning. The audio quality, unfortunately, isn't the best.
Right. And so the reason why, once again, I'm hammering this in with you guys, because this is what I do for a living, and this is just, you guys may not be familiar with these things. I know you guys are smart. You guys are the smartest audience on YouTube. But this is not your expertise. And so that's why I'm hammering it in your brain so you understand. You don't ask for permission from suspects because they can always argue duress. When just by being a suspect, you're under duress. You're under stress. You can't make proper decisions because of the mental stress that you're put under for the bad things that you did. It's still stress. It's still duress. That's why you don't ask suspects for permission. Case in point, I'm going to give you a good example right now. Doing an interrogation with a baddie. Bad guy. Not that type of baddie. You from Harlem, a baddie is a girl that look good. This is a real baddie, a bad person. And I said, hey, can I have permission to get a sample of your DNA so that I can exonerate you since you say that you did nothing wrong? Person said, absolutely. I have nothing to hide. Now, they was guilty of sin. At least I think they're guilty of sin. And they gave me the DNA. I swabbed them out. They swabbed it for me. You know, we went through the whole process to put it inside. I sealed it up, all that good stuff. Make them sign a consent form. So they gave me, this is in the interrogation. So it's recorded. So recorded interrogation, audio and video. I explained to them why I wanted the sample. I read to them the consent form so that they understood it. And then they signed it. and then they followed my instruction on how to collect the sample. I could do it, but I make them do it themselves. Because to me, it shows the court that this person truly was cooperating in giving this sample. Well, guess what? We get into court, they trying to get that sample thrown out. You know what the DA did? Don't worry about it. I'm not even going to fight it. Let them throw it out. We're just going to get a search warrant to get the sample anyway. I got verbal and written consent that was recorded, both video and audio, and then the person gave me the sample themselves, and they still wanted to fight it. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. That's why we have best practices to fight against that, to make it difficult for them to do their job, which is to break your case down. You got a capital case. You don't ask the suspect for permission to get their phone. You don't ask the suspect for permission to dump their phone. You take your butt to a judge and you get a court to give you permission. Let's keep going.
And Mr. Sterns, did you come into contact with law enforcement in January of 2024?
I did.
During your contact with law enforcement, did they seize or take an item from you?
Yes, they did.
What item was that?
That would be my cell phone.
Do you know what type of cell phone it was?
It was a Samsung Galaxy, I believe it was a 24.
And what was your understanding, if any, as to what they were going to do with it?
They were just going to check my Google Maps and check to see if I was logged into Google, and that was it. That was all I agreed to.
Were you shown, or did they have a warrant?
They did not.
The judge said he would make.
Right. So now she's going to give us some important information. I'm going to let that play out in a second. But another thing that was at issue is it was too muddied when Tagler was saying what she was specifically going to search in the phone. She never said, yo, I'm going to check this whole phone, man. That's all right with you? I want to look everywhere, man. You know, we missing this kid. You said that you're innocent. I want to check your messages. I want to check everything, bro. Your location. I'm checking everything. This whole phone, bro. Your pictures, everything. If she'd have said that, that would have given her some extra shielding. And he'd be like, yeah, you can check everything. It's all good. I have nothing to hide. Check my entire phone. It gave her extra shielding, but she didn't say that once again. She said, oh, let me check your location. Check your call log. Let me check here. She was pigeonholing herself into specific areas of the phone for her to check. It probably would have been better if she'd have just stayed silent and say, yo, can I check your phone? And just leave it at that. A blanket statement. And then let them argue in court. What does it mean when they say, I want to check your phone? Is it a specific area of the phone or the entirety of the phone? I would dare say that you have a much better argument saying it's the entirety of the phone because you didn't put a specific area of the phone. Tagler was putting herself in specific areas of the phone, yet she was checking everything. Did she do a bad job? No, she's the good guy. I'm not trying to turn the good guy into the bad guy. What I'm telling you guys is best practices wasn't followed, and that's why we're going to most likely end up with a life sentence and not capital punishment. We also might be dealing with the phone getting thrown out. Let's keep going. I think this beautiful woman is going to tell us when the judge said that they're going to come up with their verdict on the phone. Let's listen.
The judge said he would make a ruling on this at a later date. So let's talk about how they got the phone in the first place, the story here at play, and then also what legal decision the court should make. It will have big implications on the upcoming trial, no doubt about it. Let's bring in Court TV digital content producer Lauren Silver and criminal defense attorney Michael J. Brown. Let's start with the story. Lauren, I want to start with you, please. So would you kind of back us up way back to how investigators looked at the phone in the first place and saw the alleged pornographic material?
All right, so the reason why we're harping on the phone is because this is a big part of the verdict that's going to be coming in soon. Not the verdict, that's the wrong verbiage. Verdict is like guilty, innocent, but decision. That's the correct legal term to use, the decision that the judge is going to make. All right, and it's going to be huge. So after we get through this, I'm going to cut the show because I got to go to bed. All right, I got to go to bed. I got to work in the morning time. But This is huge. Big shout out though to A Obsidian, who is in the chat showing love, moderating, and we do appreciate it. Looks like Aki probably fell asleep or something like that. So she's running solo for Dolo, and she's doing an excellent job, and we do appreciate you, A Obsidian. Big shout out to all the moderators who help out on this show and keep this chat safe and clean for all the survivors and the victims and the warriors who come and experience True Crime with Strategic with us. So yeah, thank you so much for your hard work. Let's keep going.
Material. Right. So after Madeline was reported missing, she hasn't been found yet. We just know that she has disappeared, and his story was that he had dropped her off at school, and that was the last time he saw her. He gave police a lot of information about where he'd driven that day, so they wanted to look at his phone to see if his maps matched up with that. So they asked him if they could look at his phone, and they were standing next to him while they did that, and they looked through the maps, and they could see that the maps did not, his phone data didn't match with what he had been saying. So they then went to go check surveillance cameras, get some more information, and as they were standing next to him, they said, can we look through your phone? Can we look at your history? They weren't specific about what history they were looking at. And they did wind up determining that, one, there were pornographic images on the phone, and two, that he had performed a factory reset on the phone.
Ruh-roh. Okay, so he tells them that they can look, and then they...
All right. Big shout out to Callie Kobat, who's a member of the show, says, respectfully, you can't compare Kohberger to Sterns, Iowa to Florida. Have you been watching this entire show? Because I'm not comparing their crimes to each other. I'm comparing the legal process, which is the same constitutional process that happens in every single state in America. We don't live in 50 fiefdoms. We live in 50 states that all adhere to the Constitution. So I'm not trying to come for you. I appreciate you with your commentary, but you got to elaborate. What gives you the standing to make that comment? So I could learn, because, we have attorneys that watch this show. We have judges, we have cops, we have detectives, fellow detectives. You might teach me something, because from my understanding, issuing motions for appeal is something that's done in every case, especially violent felony cases across America, in every state, every town, every municipality, every hamlet. It doesn't matter where you're at. If it's on U.S. soil, that's what happens. So please give me a little bit more than just that blanket statement. Tell me how I'm wrong for simply comparing motions, not crime, not the actual crime that was committed by Kohberger, but and Sterns, but the legal process. So that's what I'm saying. So can you make that make sense, Kyla Kobat?
We see some very, very bad things. At that point, Lauren, I want to be very clear. At that point, they still did not go and get a warrant, did they?
Correct. They told him, we want to keep your phone. They said, we're going to keep this. He said, well, I'm going to need to call my dad. They said, well, you can use Jennifer's phone for that, but we're going to keep this and make a copy overnight. And either you can consent to giving it to us, or we can get a search warrant. And he was like, okay, well, then take it. So they never got a search warrant. He did consent to them taking it, and they did wind up keeping it overnight, but they never received a search warrant for this phone at any point.
Lauren, thank you for that. Boy, this is like a law school problem. Michael J. Brown, what do you say here? Legally, are they good to introduce this evidence, or is there a problem? Should they have gotten a warrant at the point in time that they saw the first pornographic images involving children?
Julie, they're good. When you have consent, they have an absolute right, the law authorities do, in order to go through that phone. So if the defendant consents and says, you can get into my phone, you can look at it, that gives them carte blanche, basically, to look at the phone. Obviously, if it's conditioned on what they can look at, which doesn't seem to be the case here, then they're limited. But having said that, a lot of police departments and district attorney's offices, even though they get the consent and they start looking and seeing things, they still may get a judicial warrant, because then they cover their bases. And then this whole issue kind of gets put.
See, even and listen, you guys, look, I'm not purporting to know what happened behind the scenes on Court TV before they started this segment, where it was like one person is going to take the, hey, it's not looking too good, and the other person is going to kind of give them a different perspective of why it might be good. But so he's playing the perspective of, no, they're good to go, right? And they might be. I'm not saying that they're not good. I'm not telling you definitively that the phone is going to get thrown out. But this guy is a very experienced prosecutor and defense attorney. And he's saying, oh, they're going to be good. They're fine. But then at the very same moment, after he says that they're going to be good and the phone is going to stay in, he then explains that it's pretty much common practice to get a search warrant. And that you never, pretty much, like most police departments will never take consent as the only vehicle they have to dump a phone. You wouldn't just rely off of consent from a perp. You say, oh, you give me consent, great, but I'm still getting a search warrant. So just, let me play that back. I really want to play back. I want to play back from the lady to him.
Are they good to introduce this evidence, or is there a problem? Should they have gotten a warrant at the point in time that they saw the first pornographic images involving children?
Julie, they're good. When you have consent, they have an absolute right, the law authorities do, in order to go through that phone. So if the defendant consents and says, you can get into my phone, you can look at it, that gives them carte blanche basically to look at the phone. Obviously, if it's conditioned on what they can look at, which doesn't seem to be the case here, then they're limited. But having said that, a lot of police departments and district attorney's offices, you know, even though they get the consent and they start looking and seeing things, they still may get a judicial warrant because then they cover their bases. And then this whole issue kind of gets put to rest because they also have a warrant. But in terms of the legality, once you consent, they absolutely have the right to search that phone. Game over.
Right. Michael J. Brown, thank you for that. You took the words right out of my mouth about how it's even better if you get a warrant too, right? Like you've been a DA, you know how it is when police may call you and say, what should we do? We're at this juncture.
Get a warrant. Big shout out to Leon Littlejohn with one more free gift membership, man. You are on a tear today, Leon Littlejohn. We do appreciate you. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything because you're being so generous today. Gee golly, man. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there was a fifth one. Leon Littlejohn gave a fifth 5-gift membership for a total of 25. And then Leon Littlejohn just gave one additional gift membership for a total of 26 gift memberships. 26 gift memberships given by Leon Littlejohn today. And that was so kind of you, and we do appreciate that. And yo, I mean, at the end of the day, 26 people now have access to the membership area. I hope you enjoy the membership area. And I do hope that you're in that chat thanking, for those of you who are actually in the chat who've received it. Some of you are not in the chat right now because Google does it at random. I have no control over it, neither does Leon Littlejohn. Please do thank Leon Littlejohn for their kindness and generosity. All right. And yeah, like Court TV is saying, get the warrant. Get the warrant. That's what Strategic would have did. Anyway, let's keep going.
Advise them, cover all your bases. But as you said, this seems like this was a valid consent, and Sterns doesn't have a viable argument. Matter of fact, we have the moment where police ask him for his permission to look through the phone. Let's play that clip. Here we go.
From what I understand, that you gave the deputies consent to look through your phone. You did, okay. And you voluntarily gave it to them so they could bring it here to do the extraction and stuff like that.
Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. So clarifying, it wasn't the first moment, but the second moment where they're going back to the first moment in time. Lauren, when you see his disposition there, and you've been watching him throughout these court hearings, you've been writing great articles for us on courttv.com. Was there a difference when you see Sterns in that room a moment ago versus what you saw yesterday in the courtroom?
Not really. I mean, his appearance has certainly changed. The beard is not quite as full. His hair is much shorter. His stature looks a little different. But he has a very nonchalant demeanor. He was described that way by police at the scene. Also, when they were interviewing him and taking his phone, he seemed very calm. He noted that he had taken a Ativan, which is a relaxant the night before. But
all right, so I think What's this guy's name? Marco Buenavides says law enforcement is genetically programmed to take shortcuts. First of all, you can't. We're not grown in test tubes, so I don't think we're genetically programmed to take shortcuts. I think a lot of times law enforcement is overwhelmed, and so people naturally take shortcuts when they're overwhelmed. It's a very demanding job. But for the most part, when you see things like this is not about shortcuts. It's about training. It's about training, and it's about best practices and what your department culture. So we've gone over the department culture of the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and it's a terrible department culture. I watched the way that they dealt with a victim who was kept right next to her abuser on body-worn camera. And citizens were like, yo, she's making claims against her dad, and they're credible. Can you at least separate them? Can you put her in a police car so she's not sitting right next to him while you're asking her to describe what he did to her an hour prior to you guys showing up? Like, that's unheard of to me. Literally unheard of to me. Yet I and everybody else on the show who cared to watch that video that I did, that reaction, you saw it with your own eyes. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to listen to my interpretation. The video is in the playlist. So we see the organizational culture that they have in Orange County Sheriff's Department. A culture that most likely would accept this type of sloppy police work. We've seen the organizational culture, or we've read about it from the Kissimmee Police Department with all the scandal that they've had and the corruption and the cover-ups and all that good stuff that happens in that police department that resulted in their police chief being terminated, higher-ups being terminated, detectives placed on leave, dozens of police officers placed on leave, and being investigated by the state for covering up use of force and other corruption that they engage in that region. So it's not LE as a whole, it's the culture that exists in these individual agencies. Just like you have good hospitals, there's some hospitals you're like, I'm not going to a hospital. They're not going to treat you good. And then you have some hospitals that strive for excellence, and you're like, yo, take me to that hospital. You have some sports teams. You'll say, I don't want my kid playing for that team because they're losers. They have terrible coach. They have terrible facilities. They're not big on discipline. They're not bringing out the best in their players. And I want my child, I want their sport acumen to be brought out by a coach. So you're going to put them with a school that aspires for greatness, right? That's just life, ladies and gentlemen. It's not all law enforcement. It's the culture of those each individual organizations that either excel for greatness or they don't. In my organization, I got tons of checks and balances to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward and I'm doing the work. And if I don't, there are those checks and balances that exist that will force me to go out there for fear of discipline, for fear of getting in trouble, to go do the right thing. And then at the end of the day, I have the county attorney who's going to look at the work and say, yo, this is bad work. And then they're going to complain. And then we also have victim advocates and victim, well, I guess advocates is the best word, who also review our cases. They review our cases. The activists. The activists review and audit our cases to make sure that we're serving these victims well. Guess what? Maybe if they had that level of checks and balances and supervision in places like Orange County and Kissimmee, we wouldn't have these problems. Because I tell you what, if I'd have dropped that entry into our database that I obtained the cell phone and receive verbal consent, not even written. If I'm out in the field and somebody's giving me written permission for something and I don't have the form, I will go into my memo pad and I will write out. I'm not an attorney, but I'll write out exactly what we're doing and do you consent to this? And have them sign it. And even that has been accepted in court. Even that has been accepted in court because I at least tried. Like, she didn't even try and get anything in writing. She just said verbally. And then we don't even have a body-worn camera where we can see video. And we got like some secret recording that she made in her pocket. Her phone is in her pocket, and they were like secretly recording this conversation. And it's like, oh, do I have permission to take your phone? If you don't give it to me, I'm going to get a search warrant, which is kind of like a threat. Really, it's kind of like a threat. Yo, give it to me or I'm just going to get a search warrant. Okay, it's the truth, but it's also a threat. You're kind of not giving a person a choice. Like, yo, we could do this the easy way or the hard way. That's basically how that sounds, right? She didn't even whip out her pad, which we know she had a pad because she's a detective, and it's impossible to be a detective or an investigator and not have a steno pad. That's like just as important as your gun. You're going to use your steno pad a gajillion times more than you're going to use your gun when you're a detective. Pretty much 9 times out of 10, the gun is just there for show for detectives because we come after the fact. The gun is just for show. We're using our brain and our pads. So she had a pad on her. She didn't even write out, on this date and time, I'm here at this location with Stephan Sterns, and I am requesting that he give me permission to take his phone and forensically dump his phone. Do you give me permission? X with a line. Put his name, the date and the time. You put your name, date and time. It's a rudimentary contract that you wrote up that's not legally binding, but guess what? The courts would look favorably on it that you at least tried to document his permission that he gave you. She just went straight verbal on the guy. Straight verbal. And that's why even legal beagles who want to support what she did still have to say, but it's not best practices. I say the word best practices, they're just describing that it's not best practice. He's like, most law enforcement in the nation would not just dump the phone based off of his verbal consent. They would just go and get a search warrant anyway. Strategic is summing all that up by saying best practices. Let's keep going.
He has never seemed to uppity. The volume was overmodulated and it was difficult to understand him, but he was calm, he was articulate, he answered the questions appropriately. He's not too chatty, but always calm, even demeanor.
Consistent. Lauren, thank you for that. Michael J. Brown, do you find it at all weird that the Florida prosecutors are going for the sex abuse case first, and second, they're going to try the capital case for Madeline's murder?
No, I don't. I think that they have the strong case here. They have it on his phone, Julie. They have the evidence on the phone. I think it's a very strong case. And then they can move forward from there. And the conviction actually may be used against them during the next.
Right. The conviction is going to give them the ability to charge them with the capital case. So they have to do that. They don't have a choice. And this attorney is basically going to say the same thing. But we all know that because we're paying attention to this case. They have to get him on the X charge first so that it can now be a factor in allowing them to seek capital punishment on the unaliving.
Next trial. So I think it's a good move.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you think that could be the strategy there, Michael, to get that conviction to introduce?
I would hope they have something behind their thought process.
Yes, something. No, I know. Great.
All right. So big shout out to Court TV. We love Court TV. We definitely subscribe and definitely watch their material. Everybody does. I mean, it's like they're like a staple of true crime. So you got to give credit where credit is due. And we do appreciate also that they allow small creators like myself to use their material, react to it, and not get all funky and mad about it. You know what I mean? But anyway, guys, I appreciate you guys immensely. We stayed a little bit longer than I thought we was going to stay. I do have to get to bed. I got to hop in the shower and I got to get some rest and get up early in the morning to go to work and do it all over again, man. It's been a rough last few days. I'm going to, before I get out of here, when I get off of here, I'm going to upload that video to the membership. So all you new members, you get to see that video that I'm dropping today, and to the Patreon, so that you guys can kind of get an insight into what's been happening with Strategic. It's been a lot. But anyway, guys, you guys are amazing, man. Big shout out to everybody who's a member. For those of you who have not decided to become members yet, consider becoming a member of True Crime Strategic. You won't regret it. You'll definitely get some exclusive content. And also consider becoming a member of our Patreon, because our Patreon is where it's at. We could talk much more freely on Patreon than we can on YouTube, because YouTube moderates everything. YouTube even moderates unlisted videos. Like if I upload a video that has violence in it or something like that, and I unlist it, meaning nobody can see it, their bot will still check it, and they can still demonetize or ban your channel for a video that's uploaded that violates their terms of service that has not been seen by anyone else. They're very strict on YouTube. And that's why we have Patreon, where we could talk a little bit more freely on the Patreon. We do a lot of members lives, Patreon lives only on the Patreon. We also do members only lives on YouTube. So each one gets their own kind of thing. So if you are of means and you can swing it, it'd probably be in your best interest to both subscribe to the Patreon and the membership. And if you're not, pick and choose which one works best for you. It is what it is. But we do support, we do appreciate the support rather, and we thank you for helping us stay on this platform. Another thing is this was a really rough month. A lot of my shows were demonetized, so it is what it is. So guys, I appreciate you immensely. I guess that's it. I'm out of here. Yeah. I'll see you guys on the next one. Strategic is out of here. Peace.